couple vanishes from their home without a trace.
This case was very challenging. There didn't seem to be any motive.
Investigators work around the clock to pick up the suspect's trail, only to lose it in the open sea.
It appeared the victim's body was hidden to delay the discovery of the crime.
Riviera Beach, an exclusive community on Florida's Gold Coast. A place of large yachts, expensive cars, and pricey homes. But on one front yard, something is out of place. Newspapers are piling up outside the home of Jeanette Pirro and her husband, Chris Benedetto. No one has seen or heard from the couple since they'd missed a dinner date a few nights earlier. A concerned family member calls police.
The only clue we had is that they had that dinner date that they never made. It was highly unlikely for them to miss a dinner date and not make a phone call.
Sergeant Galligan searches the home.
Their furniture was very expensive. All the items that they had in that home were very expensive. They lived a good life. Everything seemed to be in place. Nothing seemed to be stolen, missing, or anything like that.
A discovery in the kitchen only deepens the mystery.
The husband's wallet was in the kitchen on the countertop.
And inside the refrigerator, Sergeant Galligan finds a supply of Chris Benedetto's pain medication. But no sign of Chris or his wife.
There was no notes left behind, nothing to tell us where they went.
Then, on the verge of leaving, Galligan hears a noise coming from the garage. When he walks in to investigate, he sees one car and a very noisy freezer.
The husband was an avid fisherman, and he used the freezer in the garage to store his bait.
When Galligan opens the freezer door, he makes a disturbing discovery.
I've never seen anything like that. It was horrifying.
Sergeant Galligan has found the body of Jeanette Pirro.
It went from a missing person to a murder investigation. Right there. That's when the dynamics of the whole thing changed.
Police take Jeanette Pirro's body to the medical examiner's office to determine the cause of death.
It took several days for the body to thaw, around 5 or 6 days to totally thaw out. We noticed a ligature mark or strangulation mark around the neck. Some of the strangulation marks were overlapping, which is indicative of somebody wrapping a rope around a neck and having tension pulled on it.
Cause of death is clear. Jeanette Pirro has been strangled. But it's what's not found on Jeanette's body that catches the attention of lead detective Russ Payne. According to friends, Jeanette never went anywhere without her rings.
Prior to her disappearance, we determined that Jeanette had all her jewelry, to include her diamond ring, wedding band, and engagement ring. The family estimated the jewelry to be approximately $150,000 or more in value. When the body was found, none of those items were found.
A search of the home reveals no sign of the missing valuables or the missing husband.
The wife was found in a freezer. The husband is still missing. My first intuition is that the husband is involved in this some way or another.
And Chris Benedetto's car is also unaccounted for.
They had two vehicles. One was a BMW, which was in the garage, but a Toyota 4Runner was missing, as well as the keys were missing from that vehicle.
The search is on for the Toyota 4Runner. Police release photos of the car to the media, and before long, they get a tip. A bellboy spots the vehicle in the parking lot of a local hotel.
Just went into the hotel and we talked to management. We showed them pictures of the missing husband. We also took a look at the register, and we couldn't find anybody with that name on the register.
No one from the hotel has ever seen Chris Benedetto, and his car shows no signs of foul play. In an effort to generate new leads, Detective Payne posts a $100,000 reward for any tips that might lead to the missing husband. He is not disappointed.
We received a lot of anonymous tips over the phone line, a lot of letters that came in anonymously. They said that he killed his wife and that he's living in the Bahamas or Costa Rica.
Knowing that Chris Benedetto could be anywhere by now, Detective Payne decides to take a different approach and calls in an expert on criminal behavior.
Hello.
Special Agent Dale Hinman has consulted on numerous high-profile cases by examining evidence from a psychological perspective.
Even though the husband was considered to be the prime murder suspect, there was something he left behind that indicated he was not going very far.
And when Agent Hinman reviews the case file, she is sure of one thing.
While certain aspects of this crime appeared to be very organized, some of the small details were apparently overlooked.
Agent Hinman has noticed a small detail that could send the case in a new direction. The wife of a wealthy businessman has been found dead, and her husband is missing. Police call in criminal profiler Dale Hinman to assist with the investigation.
We think it's very important to actually go to the crime scene, to see what's around the crime scene, to see the location. It helps us to understand the crime, and that was the case this time.
These are photos of the husband's wallet that was left on a countertop, as well as medications left in the refrigerator.
What is the significance of the medication?
The victim's husband, Chris, he had a very severe back injury and he had to take medications on a daily basis.
If he was planning on living in the Bahamas, he'd have all those medications with him. Doesn't sound like he was planning on being gone for very long.
And when Dale examines some photos of the couple, she's more convinced than ever that Chris Benedetto didn't run off.
These photographs are very revealing. In each of these pictures, they're leaning towards each other as opposed to leaning away. Most of the studies regarding body language have shown that people who lean in towards each other in photographs are happy and want to be there. And I see this over and over again in each of these pictures.
But if they were having problems, Agent Hinman knows who would have that information.
I see they have a pool and a hot tub. Did the couple spend a lot of time out here?
That's correct, they did. Chris and Jen spent a lot of time out in their backyard.
Because this house is in the middle of a residential neighborhood with houses on either side and one behind, I would imagine that the neighbors would hear any kind of fight or argument that might occur on this patio. We decided to interview the neighbors who lived around Chris and Jeanette to find out if the couple argued, and if so, what about. The neighbors all reported that there was no trouble in the marriage. It didn't appear that Chris had any motive to commit this crime. So we started looking for other possible motives and other suspects.
The first thing Agent Hinman wants to know is if anything was removed from the crime scene.
If this was a property-motivated crime, We needed to determine exactly what was missing and establish a way to find those items.
Agent Hinman meets with Detective Payne to review an insurance video that documents the couple's possessions.
As you can see, they have very expensive furniture inside the living room. They have some very expensive vases right there.
Was anything missing?
The only thing we can determine right now, the only thing that's missing is the jewelry from the body. We've had that jewelry blown up to greater detail.
Was there other jewelry in the home?
Yes, she had a lot of jewelry inside the bedroom.
So the only items that are missing are items that she would have commonly worn.
Yes.
It sounds like the offender may have taken the jewelry with him. Because nothing else was taken from the home, we didn't see robbery as the primary motive for this crime. We thought the taking of the jewelry was just a crime of opportunity and that it didn't mean anything to the offender and that he was probably going to sell it.
Detective Payne sends officers to search the local pawn shops. But the search comes up short. It seems that Jeanette's jewelry has vanished.
We knew the jewelry would play an important role in linking the offender to the homicide, but when the initial search for the jewelry proved unsuccessful, we decided to refocus the investigation on finding Chris.
Police issue another plea for information on the missing husband. This time, a local resident calls in with a tip. Detective Payne checks it out.
Chris rented a dock where he put a boat. Every time Chris went fishing, he would park his vehicle in the same parking spot of where the boat was leased at.
The parking spot is directly underneath the man's bedroom window, and Chris Benedetto was using it a day or two before his wife's body was found.
The witness stated he heard several car doors slam. He looked out his window and he saw Chris's vehicle parked in a normal spot where Chris usually parks when he goes fishing. Several minutes later, he heard the boat motor start up. He looked out the other window and noticed that the boat was leaving from the dock.
Has Agent Hinman made a mistake? Is the missing husband involved in his wife's murder after all? A dock in Riviera Beach may be the departure point for a killer on the run. A witness has spotted Chris Benedetto, the prime suspect in his wife's murder, leaving town on his boat just before his wife's body was found.
We needed to determine what this meant, so we went to the dock to walk through what the witness saw and heard.
Dale, we're standing in the backyard of the witness who stated he saw Chris in the morning of the incident. While he was getting dressed in his bedroom, he stated that he heard two voices as well as two car doors closing. As he looked out the window, he noticed Chris's 1997 silver 4Runner outside.
The car is right over there by the house. Obviously, you could hear that there's two people getting out. So the two men went out together, but when the boat returned, Chris wasn't on the boat?
Chris was not on the boat. There was also something else that we saw. We noticed that the anchor was missing, including the chain. It appeared that the rope was cut.
Would Chris have taken the boat out without an anchor and an anchor line?
No, Chris was a very proficient fisherman, and he followed all the Coast Guard safety rules.
At that point in the investigation, Chris Benedetto went from being a possible suspect in his wife's homicide to a potential victim.
And the new prime suspect? The man seen getting off Chris Benedetto's boat.
Was the witness able to provide any type of description of this individual?
He stated that he was a white male, about 6'5", weighed about 275 pounds, and he had sandy blonde hair. We're trying to identify that individual at this time.
Agent Hinman thinks she knows where police should start looking.
Well, since the two men arrived together in the same vehicle and left on the boat, it must have been a prearranged fishing trip and the two men knew each other.
Detective Payne follows Hinman's advice. He takes a hard look at Jeanette and Chris's friends and family and makes a surprising discovery.
The physical description that this witness gave us matched several other family members.
A total of 7 male relatives match the description of the man seen leaving the boat. The field of suspects will have to be narrowed by other means.
Because of the victim's substantial wealth, we decided to look at who might benefit from their death. We looked at their financial records to see if any of these men might have a motive.
Police learned that Michael Koblin, one of the 7 men, had borrowed money from the couple and never repaid it.
We believe the amount of money was in excess of $150,000.
Could the $165,000 loan, the death of Jeanette, and the disappearance of her husband all be related? Finally, police have a solid lead in the murder of Jeanette Pirro and the disappearance of her husband.
Michael Koblin was a good suspect because he fit the physical description of the man that returned the boat the day that Chris disappeared, and he owed the couple over $150,000. The investigators created a photo lineup and showed it to the witness from the dock.
Without hesitation, he pointed right to Michael Koblin and said this was the individual that got off the boat the day in question.
But there's a problem. Michael Koblin lives over 1,000 miles away in New Jersey with his wife and kids, and he has an alibi. Police bring him in for questioning.
During the interview, Michael Koblin was asked where he was at during the time of the disappearance. When we'd asked him a specific question about his whereabouts, he became very agitated, very abrasive. He was sweating profusely. He was rocking back and forth in his chair.
Koblin claimed he was in New Jersey the day Chris Benedetto disappeared, and his wife, Jeanette's sister, backed up his story.
Based on his behavior during the interview, Agent Hinman suspects Koblin and his wife are lying. She meets with Detective Mike Waits from the state attorney's office. They look for holes in Koblin's alibi, beginning with his phone records.
We found several calls that were interesting. And the calls come down from his house in New Jersey, and they're to a hotel in Revere Beach. And they're all made in the time period before Chris disappears and before Jeanette disappears.
And you've already checked to see if anybody named Michael Koblin was staying in that hotel during that time frame?
No Michael Koblin, but we found a person with the same initials that's staying there by the name of Mike Carey.
Maybe that's his alias.
It's a good possibility.
But can they prove it?
After we get the registration card, we took handwriting samples from Michael Koblin and compared them with the handwriting on the registration card of Michael Carey, and 100% determined that Koblin was the person that wrote that registration card.
Investigators are beginning to crack his alibi, but simply checking into a hotel under an assumed name doesn't make Michael Koblin a murderer. Police need something stronger to make their case.
We decided to focus on the jewelry that was missing from the home. Coupled with all the other information that we had so far, if we could link Koblin to the jewelry, that would help prove that he was responsible for Jeanette's murder.
And one of Koblin's phone calls provides the missing link.
We discovered that Koblin had called this jeweler in New York. The jeweler stated that Koblin had come to him. He did, in fact, bring him this 4.03 carat princess cut diamond ring.
It's the ring missing from Jeanette Pirro's finger, and it shatters what's left of Michael Koblin's alibi.
Michael Koblin traveled to Revere Beach, Florida to kill Christopher Benedetto. Michael and Chris went out on Chris's boat. Michael Koblin killed Chris on the boat, and only Michael Koblin knows how he did that. He then used the anchor and the anchor chain to dispose of Chris's body. He then returned to Revere Beach with the intent and did in fact kill Jeanette Pirro.
Michael Koblin is tried for the murders of Jeanette Pirro and Chris Benedetto and is convicted. He is currently serving a life sentence.
Jeanette Pirro and Chris Benedetto were a happy couple who loved each other and their family. Sadly, it was their trust and their generosity that led to their betrayal and their death. Thanks to the dedication and hard work of everyone involved in this investigation, we were able to discover the truth and bring Michael Koblin to justice.